morning. This is week 2 of the cultural geography of the United Kingdom, and today I'd like to talk with you about the national symbols of the nations and regions of the United Kingdom. And probably the first one that we may start with is the symbol that you see quite a lot in all contexts, and this is the national flag. The national flag, called the Union Jack, as you can see here in the illustration. It has quite a long and complicated history. As you can see, it is a composite flag which originated by putting together some of the regional symbols, let's put it this way. Before we start looking at this combination, first of all, why is it called Union Jack? Who's the Jack? There are all kinds of theories. We do not really know for sure. One theory says that the Jack, or the Jacques, was King James I. James I in England and James VI in Scotland, the monarch from the Scottish Stuart dynasty who united England and Scotland after the death of the last of the Tudors, that is Queen Elizabeth I. And this time the language of the court was still French, so perhaps he didn't use the English sounding version of his name James, but rather the French sounding version Jacques. So this was understood as Jack by the people. So that's one version. Another version, apparently the word Jack meant a small flag flown on ships of the Royal Navy, so perhaps this was originally the kind of design used for the Royal Navy. Yet another story links it with the jackets of the soldiers in the army. So the colors of white, red and navy blue were traditionally associated with the army uniforms in Britain. So we do not really know. What is important, it is the national flag. It's not really connected with the monarchy. That's one of my cat assistants. She's a shy little girl, so she probably will not stay here for long. So back to Union Jack. This is the national flag, and anyone who feels like it can fly it. There are other flags, as you'll see in a moment. Some of them are not to be flown by anybody. And if we look at the evolution of the Union Jack, you can see that it basically combines 3 crosses. 2 of them are diagonal crosses. One is not. It's kind of horizontal and vertical lines combined. So the central red cross, red on white, is the cross of St. George. This is the national flag of England. We'll talk about the patron saints in a little moment. So this was the traditional flag of England. You can still find it sometimes used for patriotic reasons, although nowadays there are some associations with the nationalists, so perhaps not the happiest associations. And as I said, with the personal union between England and Scotland and the introduction of the Stuarts to the English throne, the two separate, formerly separate kingdoms were united into Great Britain. So this is the first union, and the new flag was designed, and this flag combined the cross of St. George, so this white and this red on white design, with the cross of St. Andrew. The cross of St. Andrew is a diagonal cross, so like this, like an X, white on navy blue background. So the first Union flag was created in the early 17th century by combining these two flags. Then the third flag, St. Patrick's Cross, which is a diagonal cross, red diagonal cross on white background, was added to the design when Ireland was formally added to the United Kingdom. So the last model comes from 1801, and this is the Union flag that is used today. An interesting thing, you can see it on the designs of Union flag, and definitely when it is flown somewhere, you can observe it, that the cross of St. Patrick is not exactly in the middle of the cross of St. Andrew. It's not a mistake, it's not some kind of laziness, so it is fully deliberate. And actually, next time you see Union Jack flown, you can see whether or not it is flown correctly, because the idea is that at the hoist, so next to the pole, to the place where the flag is attached to the pole, the cross of St. Andrew, also called Saltire in Scotland, this is the same design. If you hear the word Saltire, it means the cross of St. Andrew. So this white cross on navy blue background is above the cross of St. Patrick, and at the fly, so the other side of the flag, the cross of St. Patrick is above the cross of St. Andrew. Well, these are straight lines, so on one side of the flag there is more white on top, and on the other side, naturally, the red part is on top. The idea is to give precedence to the cross of St. Andrew, because Scotland has been longer in the Union. It's a subtle way of pointing out that Scotland has been longer in the Union than Ireland. So yes, it does happen sometimes, especially in foreign countries, where they want to fly the Union Jack for, I don't know, some official visit or something, that they fly it the other way around. It is not correct. Also, it is not correct to have a perfectly symmetrical design with the cross of St. Patrick in the center. So that's one thing. Some of you may ask, and what about Wales? Wales has their own designs, and one of them is actually a cross, which is a yellow cross, regular vertical and horizontal lines combined, a yellow cross on black background. This cross is called the cross of Saint David, the patron saint of Wales, and we don't see any trace of yellow or black on the Union Jack, and the question is, why not? The answer is relatively simple. When the first Union Jack was created, England and Wales have been unified for many centuries, and nobody really wanted, especially nobody in England, wanted to emphasize the separate culture and separate national identity of Wales. So it was somehow integrated into the cross of St. George and never really added to the national flag. Actually, Wales has another flag, even more popular than St. David's cross, and this is the flag with the dragon. If you ever go to Wales, or if you are interested in the history of Wales, you cannot miss this very, very distinctive flag, which consists of two halves, two horizontal halves. The upper one is white, the lower one is green, and on top of this background we have a very fierce looking red dragon called Cadwaladr. Cadwaladr. This is apparently the Welsh name for the dragon. This is the flag that has become popular with the triumph of the Tudors. So when the Tudor dynasty came to the English throne after the Wars of the Roses, this was like the personal flag, the family flag of the Tudors, and especially Henry VIII was quite proud of his Welsh heritage. So this is a regional flag. There are some legends concerning the Welsh dragon, and we'll probably talk about some of the Welsh legends and the connection of Wales with the Arthurian cycle at some later stage. But anyway, there is this traditional design with this majestic beast, and as you will see slightly later on, there are some other standards, especially the royal standard, which use a lot of heraldic beasts, and they could as well include Cadwaladr, but for some reason they don't. So that's the flag, and I promise you a little bit about the patron saints. There are very interesting stories and legends concerning different candidates and different regional saints. Officially, as you can see, reflected in these regional flags. The patron saint of England is St. George, the patron saint of Scotland is St. Andrew, the patron saint of Ireland is St. Patrick, and of Wales, St. David. If we look at England, however, this is a bit more complex. We have some more saints, some more candidates. Of course, St. George is now recognized as the patron saint of England and some other places. For example, the country of Georgia, for some reason. Because if you look at it, St. George, as a historical or even legendary character, did not have much to do with England. You can probably remember all the artistic depictions of St. George slaying a dragon. So he's a kind of knight, usually represented on horseback, and slaying the dragon, which is of course some sort of symbol of, I don't know, mastering the animal nature or battling with evil or something like that. There is some sort of story involving the freeing of a princess who was, I don't know, supposed to be sacrificed to the dragon or whatever. So in many many artistic depictions. We have Saint George as this very gallant knight helping a damsel in distress. But as I said, he has nothing to do with England. He never visited England. None of the stories regarding St. George mention the fact that he visited England, even in the legends. So how did it happen that he became the patron saint of England? The idea behind it is probably connected with the fact that he was the knight. He was the saint connected with knighthood and chivalry. So during the Crusades, he became a kind of patron saint of knights, crusaders, and he was proclaimed to be the patron saint of England in 1350 by King Edward III, Edward the Lawgiver, one of the great medieval monarchs, the same one who formed the Order of the Garter. Actually, the Order of the Garter was partially in honor of Saint George, so this is when Saint George became the patron saint of England. He was further venerated by the medieval monarchs, especially King Henry V. You probably remember from Shakespeare's play The Battle of Agincourt and the great speech that King Henry V delivers, and the battle cry, so England and St. George. So that's it. This is probably the reason why this saint became so popular in England. But there are other candidates. Probably the first of such candidate would be Saint Augustine of Canterbury, the missionary from Rome who came to Britain to preach Christianity, who is credited for introducing, or actually reintroducing, Christianity to Britain, because there was a kind of small margin of Christians in the late Roman period, but after the Romans withdrew, after the Anglo-Saxons invaded and settled in England, most of the population went back to the pagan religion. So Saint Augustine came in the 6th century. He became the first Archbishop of Canterbury. There is a legend about how he became interested in England in the first place. So apparently he noticed some beautiful children in Rome being sold as slaves. They were beautiful, blonde-haired children, and he asked somebody, like, where did these people come from? And he was given the answer, these are the Angles, so Anglo-Saxons, the Angli in Latin. And he said, they are not Angles, they are the angels. So they are so beautiful that of course they should be saved, they should be Christianized, and this is what he decided to do. Later on, of course, the cathedral at Canterbury became associated with one more very important local English saint, that is Saint Thomas Becket, the political saint, you might say, the one who was murdered while celebrating Mass at the cathedral. And this is why we have the pilgrimage site. But before that, the cathedral was there, and it was established by Saint Augustine. So here we have another important English saint. There is one more important saint, one of the Anglo-Saxon kings, King Edmund, who also was one of the first rulers of England. He was the king of East Anglia, who was converted to Christianity, and later he was killed by the Vikings. There are stories of King Edmund being repeatedly shot with arrows, so a little bit like Saint Sebastian, but that's a native English story, and he was venerated as the patron saint of England before St. George, and his resting place became a very famous medieval abbey in the city named after him, so Bury St. Edmunds. I'll return to the question of pilgrimages in a little moment. Let us now also look at the patron saints of the other regions. So in Scotland we have St. Andrew. His day of remembrance of celebration is November the 30th, and he was one of the original apostles of Jesus. So again, he was not very likely to visit Scotland, although there are some legends which say that after the crucifixion of Jesus and after the apostles were sent to preach Christianity to, I don't know, all corners of the world, he actually came to Scotland, and he established the first church in the city of St. Andrews. This is one of the important cities in Scotland, and the Cathedral of St. Andrew there was apparently at some point the largest church in Europe. It was destroyed after the Reformation, so now it is a kind of splendid ruin. Another more likely explanation why St. Andrew became the patron saint of Scotland is that the relics, the bones of St. Andrew, were brought to Scotland in the early Middle Ages by one of the local rulers or noblemen. So it's not really that St. Andrew visited Scotland while he was still alive, but that his bones were brought to Scotland as an object of veneration. Then we have Saint Patrick, a very well-known saint, mostly because of the celebrations of his Remembrance Day on March the 17th. He is very popular in Ireland, of course, not only in Northern Ireland. He is not the patron saint of Northern Ireland, but of the entire island of Ireland. Also, he is popular internationally, and especially in the United States, due to the great popularity of this saint among the emigrants from Ireland who came to the United States, mostly in the 19th century. They were mostly Catholic, and they brought the veneration of Saint Patrick with them. He was again a bishop, a man of the church, credited for bringing Christianity to Ireland somewhere in the 5th century AD, of course, or CE, Common Era. And he is usually depicted as a bishop, usually in green robes. Green is a color of Ireland, a kind of national color of Ireland. Very often with the shamrock in his hand, so this kind of three-leaved clover. And this is due to one of the legends connected to Saint Patrick. So apparently he used this plant to explain the concept of the Holy Trinity to the people in Ireland. Another legend connected with St. Patrick is that apparently he drew the snakes out of Ireland. So when he arrived to the shores of Ireland, all the snakes ran away and they were never seen again. I think perhaps the most interesting of these saints, and definitely the least known, is Saint David, and he is the local saint born and bred and died in Wales. In the 6th century, he was also the man of the church in the early Middle Ages. His day of remembrance is on the 1st of March, and he was a very pious man who practiced all kinds of penance works and deprivation. He is believed to be a vegetarian, so he only ate vegetables. This is the origin, this is the basic origin of the popularity of the leek as the national plant in Wales. Apparently, this was the vegetable that he liked and that he ate instead of meat. You may recall also the story from Shakespeare, from Henry V, when the king goes around his camp at night and talks to the soldiers, and one of the Welsh soldiers tells him the story about some battle in which Welsh soldiers attached leeks to their caps. But the popularity of the leek goes back to Saint David. There is a city in Wales at the very western tip of Wales called Saint David's, and there is the cathedral. This is apparently the smallest city in the United Kingdom. Less than 2,000 people live there, but because it has a cathedral, it is a city. So this is also a pilgrimage site, a very important, venerated place, quite well known and still in good condition. So we continue in a moment.